Hi, welcome to another Roboflow training movie. In this training movie, I will show you how you can import tab-delimited text or comma-separated text, CSV files, into Cumulus. I prepared the workflow, so I'm first going to demonstrate the purpose. Imagine that you have a Cumulus catalog in which you want to import some metadata that was created by users, maybe in a text file, or maybe was exported from your internal system. In your Excel file, for instance, you have several columns and you want to import some of those columns. You want some of those columns, some of those values to go into your Cumulus catalog. What you need is some column that contains a unique identifier to find the record or records. It can be plural. You can have one line entry where you want to put all your metadata for several records. In this example, I have a column in which I've specified the file name. Excel could also upfront be created by Roboflow by an export workflow, creating a tab-delimited text file where in the first column is the file name of all the files that require metadata. So it could be going both ways. Here it could be also a part of the file name, or it could be a SKU, whatever you can search on in your Cumulus database. Basically, out of the box, Cumulus does not import Excel files, but it does is able to import a tab-delimited text file. So what we can do is we can just simply select the columns we want to import and create a text file, a tab-delimited text file. I have a drop folder somewhere and I'm going to create a text file, new text document, test1, and in that text file I'm going to edit it with the simplest of editors, and I'm just saying I'm pasting this in here. I'm creating the text file. So if I run the workflow, start, the workflow sees that particular text file and will process it. If we look at the log, we can see that it will first of all check the text file, then it determines which catalog it needs to use, and it then line by line it constructs a query. And then it says how many records it finds, and then it's saying that it found the record, and then it says okay, column 2 is the keywords column, and I'm setting the value of the keywords field to plain. Column 3, on purpose, I added a field that does not exist. Instead of notes, I wrote notas, and it's supposed to set it in this is a plan, but it fails because notas doesn't exist. So it doesn't matter if you have such a column, it will just fail, but you do have the information in your log. So you can know if everything went fine. Also, if there's a value that for which it cannot find a record, you will find, for instance, for the search on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which was on line 6, you have 0 records found. And then this workflow also sends out an email, so it notifies the user about the import. If we have a look at the mail, then we will see that we get a little report in the mail, and let me show you. Below you find the record of imported text files. Can be multiple text files, of course, that are being dropped, and then I can find it tells me which file, it tells me how many lines it had in the text file, and it said how many there were really processed. it doesn't process the header, because remember, the header contains the field names, and then it also checks column by column if the column exists. Here it says file name was not found in the catalog, but that is not a problem, because the first column is used for searching, and it knows in the query, as we will see in the workflow, that it doesn't matter that your first column name is invalid, because it doesn't use that. The other columns, for the other columns, it is important that the field names are exactly as they exist in Cumulus, because that's how it knows where to save it. So it says, okay, keywords is the field okay, notas is not okay. I cannot find notas in my catalog. So you know, you get a little report telling you, wait, if your purpose was that column 3 was going to go to a Cumulus field, you made a mistake, and you can fix it. Same for the dollar categories, is of course something that he cannot find, although he will be able to create the categories, as we will see later on. Then status is also a field that it can create, so that it can find, so it can assign values to it. And then you can also have as many empty columns as you like. It's just warning you, this is an empty column, so that means it will skip this particular column. And then it starts processing line by line, and only those lines for which there is a problem it will report. So it sees, okay, record name value 123 results in no records found. So if you're saying I'm okay with that, you don't need to check your text file. If you're saying, okay, that was not on purpose, then you can check it, what happened. And if we have a look in Cumulus, we will see that the information that we added in the text file is now here present in the catalog. And also all the different categories import, and so all those are now available. So it has imported that information. Then this is how it works. If we have a look in the record, in the workflow, it's a hot folder workflow. It looks in a particular folder, the folder that we define here, the drop folder. It can be whatever, wherever you like. Notice that I have here subfolders with names of catalogs. In the example that I just did, I dropped it here, but maybe you want to offer the users the ability to drop files for different catalogs. So you can either give them a direct share to a specific folder with a catalog, so certain departments can only import them in certain catalogs, or you can grant them access to all these folders, and then they can decide themselves where it goes. So if I have a little text file and I drop this in the asset delivery catalog, then it will try to import everything into the asset delivery catalog. In this case, it means it won't find anything because the asset delivery catalog does not contain the records, but it will give you again a report that the workflow is using now this asset delivery catalog and is doing the queries, but is not finding any records. So we will see in the mail that it will tell you, hey, you didn't find anything, everything failed. So your mail will reflect that too. So if there's a mistake, no worries, you will be told about it. So you will be informed that it processed 0 lines, and you can have a detail of what went on during the processing. Let's have a quick look in the workflow. In the workflow, we configured that we're looking in a certain folder. Here for this purpose I'm looking in the application folder. It can be anywhere on your network. As a protection feature, I made sure that you can only it will only process files .txt. So if somebody drops in a JPEG, it will not process it. You can specify an email the person to notify when these files are being imported. You could change the script that this is dynamic and that it picks up that information, for instance, from the name of the drop folder, from the dropped file, or the folder it was dropped in. There's all kinds of possibilities to make that dynamic as well. And then this is the notification mail. You get the report. So that's the report, and the report, actually the most important part is down here. It says what's the date timestamp, the file name, number of lines, number of processed, and you can have the import log. If you don't want that detailed log, you can just remove it. You can fine-tune this as much as you like. And it always keeps the processed file, just to be 100% sure that you can always go back to it. It keeps the file that was imported. For the catalog name, you could hard-code it and say here, I'm only importing to this particular catalog, in which case you just select or specify the name of the catalog. I made it dynamic so that we can also look in the subfolder. So if the file is dropped into a subfolder of the drop folder, then it will pick up this name, and by that it will know that it has to use a particular catalog. If it's not dropped in a subfolder but in the root of the hot folder, it will take the sample catalog in this example, or whatever catalog you specify. Then we're coming to another interesting feature. As you saw in our Excel file, it took the first column of the values, but in reality you can decide that it goes somewhere else. I will show you that in a minute, that it has to use a different column for searching. But you can define upfront, look, this is the field you're going to search for, and this is the column you're going to use. You can also dynamically change the query. Now it's using that search field, this one, or the one it finds in the file, and the search value coming from that column, or if a different column is specified, from that different column. So now it's an exact search. But imagine that, for instance, in here there's not the .eps but only illustration, airplane as illustration. Then you could simply change here to, instead of equals with, starts with, and then you could, for safety precaution, even add at the end here a dot saying starts with that file name dot something, and then that is also an option. So you keep your options open this way. The last parameter is the type of text file. Out of the box here I specified that the columns are separated by tabs, but you can also say that they're separated by commas or by semicolons. So that's also something you can configure. So let's do some more examples. We will go into the details of the workflow at the end of the movie. So let's look at another scenario. Let's say that you can put the search column somewhere else. You're saying, okay, I want to keep searching on the same field, which was defined in the workflow as being the record name. We're going to search for the record name, but your column where your field names are is something different. So you're saying, okay, by putting here an asterisk, a star, it knows that this is actually the search column. So if I'm using this, if I want to fix my problem, which I saw in the previous run, that it's notes, then it can do that. If you want to say, okay, in this case, I don't want to import the categories, you can keep this header empty, and it will just skip this particular column. So again, I'm selecting this, going to my folder, and let's say that I'm dropping it right into this one. So I'm creating a new text file, test2, and going into the text file, I'm dropping in this, and now we go to the workflow and I can just say start workflow. When we have a look at the log, we can see that it starts here and then it finds test2 and it says okay, sample catalog, searches, finds the record, column 1 set the keywords, column 3 set the nodes, column 5 set the status. Notice there is no column 4 anymore because the header was empty, so it skips that. Notice that it's now using column 1 being the keywords to set the value and using column 2 to do the search. And so it gets this record name from the airplane illustration. Remember, we don't have the wording record name in the particular column, so that is how it processes everything. And again, our line where there's a value it cannot find, it does not matter. This is line 6. If you look here, this is line 5, line 4, line 3. Should you have a line where there's no search value, then it just skips the search value. So a line with an empty search value, it will skip. We will do this in this last example. This last example, you can see here some key, but let's say that that has always been there in the test, so but you never saw this appear as an error. It's considered normal that an empty value in a search column is just telling you we don't need to search this for this row. This is a row, not a process. But let me put it here. So I'm doing it like this. Notice that in this column I specify the star with a field I want him to search in. So I'm saying asset name. Of course, now it needs to be an exact match. You're telling him don't use the default, use column 2 and use the word asset name to search for. Again, you could say I don't want this last because actually I don't want this last column. So I'm going to say Control C, going to my drop folder, and again I'm going to say new text document test3, and then I'm going to open with Notepad. I'm pasting it and saving it and running my workflow. Of course, your workflow can be running on a time interval, checking that folder every minute, every hour, whenever you like. I'm doing it manually to give us the time to investigate and see actually what it is doing. So show log, we look here at the run, and again, remember, I did not fix the notas error in the third example, so that is still giving me an error. But now it's searching for the asset name instead of the record name in the previous example. Notice here in this example it was looking for the record name. Now here in this example it's looking for the asset name, and it finds the same stuff, of course, because the asset name and the record name are two fields containing almost the same information in Cumulus. Notice also that we have line 5, and when we go here we have line 3. So line 4 is skipped. That was the clouds that I made empty. And so here you can see not the clouds, the camels. And so I emptied this, so it just says I'm skipping this this line. And so you can nicely see that that line has not been processed. And when the workflow is finished, it will of course have a new report telling you, okay, we had 7 lines, it only processed 3, and so column 1 was okay, column 2 was okay, it's the asset name, and it says it's the new search field, and then the rest are just fields. The notas it cannot find, it needs to be notes, so you get notified. $categories it doesn't recognize, but it does process it, because $categories is not a field. It tells the workflow to set the value in the categories field under $categories. Another option to do this is just to specify here, but then in every entry you have to prefix it with dollar categories like this. So then, oh, typo, then you would not have to then you would not get that message about dollar categories being not accepted. Okay, so be careful with the column names. Whenever you specify a column name with a dollar in front of it, it assumes that it is a root category, so it needs to assign a category. So should you have anything like dollar prices and this, then be careful. It will assume you're looking for a category called dollar space prices to put the other categories underneath. So don't do that. If you need to specify a dollar in your heading, do prices dollar or whatever, then it will go fine. So finally, let's have a look at the technical side of the workflow. How does it work? What does it do? Well, it's quite a big script, as you can imagine. So I'm going to show you. First of all, I'm picking up the catalog name from this parameter here just to evaluate. Notice that usually for placeholders I use hashes, which is the normal thing. Here I put dollar signs. The reason is that I'm telling the workflow it should not evaluate this here. It should evaluate it inside the action script. So that's why it's a dollar. Then in the next step it will be evaluated and not here, while this is being evaluated immediately when the script is loaded. Same here, the query doesn't need to be evaluated before the workflow. At the start of the workflow it needs to be evaluated inside the workflow. So that's why I'm telling the workflow don't bother evaluating this here. So that's what I pick up. I pick up the global Cumulus catalog field, and then I test if the catalog name contains a slash, because if it picks up the subfolder, it could be subfolders in subfolders, so I want to remove anything beyond the first folder. So that's what I'm doing there. If there's I'm testing if this contains a slash. If so, I'm taking the left part in front of the slash. Then I'm writing that information to my log, and then I open the catalog using that local catalog parameter and storing that. Next thing is that I'm going to create the target folder where I want to copy the file to. Then I copy the file to it, and then I read this text, this copied file, and I store it as a table. I'm going to process this kind of Excel style, row by row, and then column by column. So that's why I'm reading this tab-delimited file or comma separated file. It picks up what type of file it is from your parameters. And then I'm storing some internal information, the import log. I'm having a line counter. I have a process line counter. All of those you've seen before in the result coming up. Then I'm storing the search column, picking it up from the default search column that we have specified here. And then I'm doing the same for the search field. The default search field also picked up here. And then I'm going to process the table the first time, the text table, and I'm going to process actually only the first row. That's why I have here exit current process loop. So whatever is underneath is processed for each individual row of the table, but I first want to pick up, analyze the header. I want to know what's inside. Is the header valid? What's my search column, etc., etc. So I want to be able to store that. So for that purpose, I don't want to go through all the lines. I just want to go through the first one. So doing that, I exit here immediately, exit current loop. So that's how you can decide to exit a loop of records, a loop of rows, whatever loop is currently being processed. So that's that, looping through the table. And then I'm going to column by column, and here I'm column by column analyzing what I'm counting the columns, and then I'm saying, okay, if this column starts with a star, remember I'm looking for a search column that could have a star. Here starts with a star, this one starts with a star, and this one starts with a star. I want to know that because then my column where I'm searching is other than the default, so I need to set it. If not, then I look if it's an empty header, because if it's an empty header, I don't need to care about. And if it's not an empty header, I want to know. Here I'm storing in the import log that it is not an empty header. So I'm storing the field name that I'm searching for, and then I'm testing if the search field exists in the catalog. So I'm testing here if the search field exists in the catalog. If not, it will just give an error, and it will say, hey, for your log which you get in your mail, it says sorry, you have an invalid log. Here we could decide to skip for instance categories. So we could say if it starts with categories, I would say with $, I can say this is a category. I don't want this column to be added. This is not a mistake. This is $ categories or $ sources or whatever, and $ project, whatever you want to call your root category. So that is an option to add that test here. And then when this loop is done, we finally have we have reset our search field potentially and our search column. Then I'm resetting my line counter. I was using that parameter to count actually the columns inside this one, and then I'm going to process the table again. Now what is different here, I'm saying process all rows. In fact, I'm only processing the first one because of this break instruction I have in here, and this exit. But here I'm starting from do not process the first row, because I don't want to do anything with that header row in terms of setting metadata. And so I can run now from the second row. And then we have an incremental adding 1 to the line counter. I'm then storing my my query. So what I'm actually storing here is the search column. I'm setting that into my query, and I'm testing if the value is not empty, because if it's empty, then I want to skip this. So I'm going to say I don't need the value. Then I'm storing the search value in the variable, and I'm saying this particular column get me the value, and then I'm building the query. And so I'm building the search query, picking it up from here, and that's where it's going to evaluate all these tags, picking up the values that we've been constructing here. Here's the search value, and here's the search field. So, and then it writes that information to the log. That's that entry that shows which query it will execute. Then finally it executes the query, picking up the query we just constructed. And then we're testing here if there were no records found. If there were no records found, then it's going to add to the log an entry saying, hey, there were no records found, you have a problem. And otherwise it's just going to increment the processed line counter and write, and then finally it writes to the log saying, hey, this is the result of the query, 1, 2, 0 records found. And finally we're going to process the records found, which is usually 1. I'm storing the record ID, I'm storing the record name. I just want those 2 values there to be able to output that into my log, and then I'm writing this to the log. Then I'm storing the column numbers. I'm initializing the column numbers. I'm going to count the columns, and I'm saying that my tab delimited text file here, I'm processing line 1, let's say, line 2, line 3, line 4, and it offers within this loop the line as an array of strings, which is called line. And now I'm using that to process every row of that line. So I'm now going to look at the individual rows. I'm incrementing my column number, and I'm saying, okay, the field name. What is the field name I need to search for? Well, I'm getting that from the first line. Remember that up top we did an inspection of the header line, and we called that first line. So now I'm saying I'm in this column, which I just counted, and I'm saying give me the name of that field from the header. That's what it stores in this field name. And then I test if it's empty, because if the field name is not, I put an exclamation mark in front of it, if the field name is not equals to empty, then I'm going to do something with it. Then I'm testing also if the column value is not empty, because if the column value is not empty, I'm also ignoring it. That's an option. You can decide what to do with that. And then finally, I'm looking if this column is not the search column, because I'm not going to set values for the search column. The search column is to search for, not to set values. Then I'm outputting this to the log if the debug of the debug parameter, which I've set here, is set to true. At this point, we have debug enabled. We can at any point disable that, so you don't have a log of every individual entry. And then it sets the value. It says I'm setting the field name to the value col, the column which we are processing, which is being processed. Column numbers is stored under a string col. That's how it sets the value. So when this whole process is done, at the end it closes the catalog. So that's how this workflow is built. This is how it works, and as you see, you have big flexibility in terms of the catalog name can be the subfolder or not. The query can be whatever you like. You can have a fixed search column, or you can make it, you can decide it on the spot. You have the header of each column in the catalog. So all those options are here available. Thank you for joining. I hope this demo movie helps you understand how to import tab delimited text files into Cumulus using Canto Roboflow.